Hello and welcome. I'm Ben the Best 5 and I'm coming at you with yet another episode of my Kerbal Space Program playthrough. I am sorry that last week's mission was a bit long, however it did have quite a lot of content in it, so I figured it was justified to leave most of it in. And I did the maths from my upper stage recovery, and it actually saved me about $3,000 by recovering that stage, so I guess it was worth it. Anyway, for this mission, our next contract is to dock two objects in orbit around Kerbin, and while we're there, there's a Kerbal stranded in Kerbin orbit up there. You know, he got stuck up there by some inferior space agency probably, and we're going to pick him up, rescue him, and then dock with our space station core which we have up there, and then we're gonna fly back and yay, complete the missions. Alright, as you can see, I've in fact waited till our stranded Kerbal was just behind the craft where the launch site will be launching from, so that we can in fact launch and end up on a rather ideal trajectory to intersect it and perform our rescue of the stranded Kerbal. Now this craft that you're seeing here is basically the exact same as the one I used for my Minmus flybys and orbit. However, I have in fact taken out the science modules because they aren't going to be any use to us because we've already collected all of our Kerbin sphere of influence science that we can collect, and we will in fact be, and I swapped that with a massive monopropellant tank, and I also add RCS thrusters onto this fuel tank, sorry, onto the upper stage, so that we can easily perform our docking maneuver. Just because having RCS, although it's not necessary to perform a dock, it does make the whole process a lot smoother and a lot easier. Just because it means you can make fine adjustments whilst you are near your target. And that is super useful when trying to dock two targets, just because you gotta get nice and close and then make a whole bunch of fine maneuvers and then gently ease yourself towards your target and then dock. And we will in fact be decoupling our nose cone because we don't need it anymore, and it was in fact blocking access to our docking port, which will be very important for our docking with our space station, which we have placed in Kerbin orbit. Alright, you can see there that our apoapsis is very close to the target's orbit. Now, I should have perhaps launched a little bit sooner, because the target craft has moved quite a large amount in the time that it took us to launch, so yes, perhaps to get a better encounter we could have launched a little bit sooner, but that being said, it's not going to be too much of a worry because we're still going to be in quite a good orbit to end up getting to our target and rendezvousing and letting one Kerbal jump across and jump into the spare seat on board the craft. And yes, this craft can carry 3 Kerbals. However, I only packed 2 because I needed to leave some spare space for the Kerbal which we need to rescue from Kerbin orbit. So we're just going to circularize here, and once we are circularized we can in fact start to plan our encounter with the stranded vessel, as well as that's basically what we're going to do next, is we're going to plan our encounter with it so that we can then in fact rendezvous ourselves. And the good thing about our orbit is it's going to end up being rather close to what the target's orbit is already, since we did launch at such a window and we are going into a low Kerbin orbit just like the target. It means that we are going to end up on a rather it means that our burn to slow down to end up in an orbit which matches theirs, and to be rendezvoused around them is going to be rather quick. However, it's going to take us quite a few orbits to get there because our orbits are so similar. However, we will, since we are on a slightly lower orbit, catch them. So we are in fact going to wait a couple of orbits, and then we are going to make a very small maneuver to put ourselves on a very close encounter with the target, at which point we can in fact then perform all of our necessary target things, such as slowing down once we have reached a very low. And here you can in fact see me just making some fine adjustments with the maneuver node, and this is just so that we can try and get a close encounter, without having to do too much. And after that, if our encounter's not going to be particularly good, like for example here it looks like it's going to be about 4 kilometers off, which not great, but certainly not terrible. Which, once we get there, we're going to be in a bit of, we're going to be at a rough, quite a rough encounter, but we'll still be encountering it nicely. So then we can, in fact, alright, 3.6 kilometers, that's kind of a bit of a rough encounter, but alright, won't matter. And we can in fact, we've got a second encounter coming up, which will in fact be at 1.4 kilometers, which is closer than the other encounter we have on this side of our orbit. So we are in fact going to target that one to perform our rendezvous with. And how you rendezvous once you've managed to get a close encounter is you in fact, on the nav ball here, you in fact select target, and then from there you in fact target the retrograde marker, which will in fact pull you to, and if you burn along there until your target velocity reaches 0, it means that you are going to end up being, it means that your velocity relative to the target is going to be 0 or near 0, which means that compared to where you are, compared to the target is in fact not going to change. So we in fact have our two vessels parked about 1.5 kilometers away. See, over there. Now to get closer, we are in fact going to point towards the target and burn our engines just a little bit. And as you can see here, it's creating another maneuver just by doing this, which is bringing our two crafts together from our from our encounter, which was a bit rough. So it's going to bring them nice and close, and between about 100 and 200 meters away from each other, which is going to be nice and close and excellent for our encounter. So once we get there, we can turn our engines and stop ourselves moving relative to the target, and at that point we will in fact be nice and close and can switch vessels and make our Kerbal on the stranded ship perform a spacewalk across. So they are in fact nice and close, as you can see here, and we can send them on EVA now and make them jump off their doomed craft and activate their RCS and fly towards the other craft, wherever it may be. Should only be about 200 meters away. There it is, down there, and we can in fact fly towards it. Now I'm going to speed this up just because it's going to be pretty slow footage. But yeah, basically we just burn towards it with our EVA pack and also downwards because it's a bit below us. And then once we get there, we in fact have to cancel out our burn. Now, it's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to see this target, particularly because we're on the nighttime side of the planet, and since we did have a nice handy target indicator there which showed us where it was, but that's gone now. However, we can still see it in the shadows just, particularly if we mouse over it and highlight the parts in green. Yeah, and we're nearly here, so we can in fact start to slow down our speed relative and undo some of the burns we did. And we can in fact look for the side with the door, which is in fact the side that doesn't have the parachutes. So it's around here, and we have to in fact go around the craft until we find the one with the door, because they can only enter where there is a door. So we can in fact move towards the ladder and climb up it if necessary, and then board the craft. Alright, we have gotten close enough to the ladder to grab it. We can climb up it a bit and board the craft. And we have now successfully rescued our Kerbal, and we have 3 Kerbals on board this craft. Which means we have completed our first mission for this, or first part of our mission for this launch. And now we can in fact perform the second half, which is to dock with our station and complete our second mission. Now, we are behind the space station we are trying to dock with. However, we are also in a lower orbit, which means we should catch up to it fast, which is great. Now, to do this, we want to transfer from a lower to higher orbit, obviously. And for that, we in fact want to basically we just gotta find the right spot. The right spot where we can in fact perform a burn from one orbit to another and get a close intersect. So it looks like if we in fact burn at that point there and cancel out that, because we do not want to be burning in that direction, because that would be bad. Yes. That must have been the one I accidentally bumped earlier. Well, I accidentally bumped something. Not sure what. Alright, because of our inclination difference, it looks like this particular encounter is going to be the better one, the closer one. So we're in fact going to move our burn around our orbit until we get close. Here we are, 0.8 kilometer separation. That's pretty good for an initial encounter, but we can take it down to a 0.6 kilometer encounter, which is also pretty good. 0.5, that's only 500 meters away, and we should be able to get an encounter nice and easily from that, which is great, you know. Easy encounters are good. And I did pack quite a bit of fuel in this stage. However, it doesn't look like we're going to use all of it, which is great. You know, because we're only moving from targets from one target in low kerbin orbit to a different target in low kerbin orbit. So because of that, our burns are going to be quite small to transfer between target to target. And we have executed our burn very nicely, and we have a 400-ish meter separation. So now we want to, it was already selected to target automatically for us, but now we want to switch around and face target retrograde so that we kill off our velocity relative to the target, so that we end up in basically the same orbit as it and not moving relative to it. Now you can see that as we're getting closer, we are in fact slowing down relative to it, That's great because it means that our slowdown burn to get into a rendezvous with it will in fact be significantly reduced. Because initially, if we had tried to perform such a burn earlier, we would have in fact not had enough fuel to do that. But now we have plenty of fuel, plenty enough fuel to perform said maneuver, because we got closer and the requirements to do said burn were reduced. Now we are in fact going to burn a little bit closer to our target and bring ourselves nice and close. That's only 200 meters away, which is very close. 100 meters away-ish. Alright, that should be good enough. Now we gotta face target retrograde again, because we're gonna have to kill off our velocity again when we get nice and close. However, it won't be very difficult to do that because we are moving very slowly. Oop. Now we overshot just a little bit, but we have RCS on board, which can be in fact used to perform some very small maneuvers, and we can in fact perform maneuvers in either direction relative to our target. So we can in fact fire our RCS thrusters backwards along the craft, so to speak, and bring ourselves back towards the craft after accidentally overshooting a small amount. And we are also going to come in at a very nice angle to come in and dock with one of the docking ports on this craft, which is great, because we want to do that. We want to target one of the docking ports. And if we had in fact come around if we came around on a side which didn't have a docking port, then we'd have to in fact maneuver around the craft and get to a point where there was a docking port available to us. However, we don't need to worry about that, just simply because we will in fact be coming up against a side that does have a docking port. Now we're going to move so that we're pointing towards our target here, and we are in fact going to perform just a little burn so that we start moving in a little bit closer. And from here we are going to be manually rotating our craft first so that we are kind of in line with the docking port rotationally. So we're on the same angle so that we come in correctly. And then once we are in roughly the right angle, we are in fact going to be switching over to linear controls for our craft, and we will perform the rest of our dock by doing that. When we get close, we might need to perform some small changes in our rotation, just because we did initially set our rotation quite far out from our target. However, this probably won't be much of an issue because it looks like I was able to rather accurately get the inclination of our target. And there we go. The two targets are very close, and they have docked nicely. They were able to dock in such a nice manner like that because the docking ports in fact have magnets on them, so if you get your two ports close enough, they will in fact just snap together like that. Okay, we have in fact docked two vessels around Kerbin, which satisfies that condition. We also need to transmit or recover some science from space around Kerbin. I almost forgot about that mission, but I'm glad I didn't. It's a freebie, So we are going to perform a quick crew report and then transmit it. Oh, we don't have a device that can transmit it. We have an aerial on this. Okay, well, we will in fact just keep the experiment then and land with it, because that basically does the same thing, except transmitting it like that makes it a bit less tedious, if you will. It just means that we can complete the mission right then and there, which is a little bit, I guess you could say, safer. Alright, and now we have completed that, I guess we might as well undock our vessel from our very small space station core we have there, because, well, we're not going to use this as a permanent module to the space station. It's just a simple dock with the space station for a short amount of time, because that's all we need for the mission. In later missions, which we get to perhaps expand the station, then our modules will stay there, perhaps permanently. But for the meanwhile, it's not going to stay there for very long, right? Because, well, we don't need it to. Now we in fact have come to a spot where we can perform a retrograde burn and hopefully end up nicely just off the shores of Kerbin for a nice and easy recovery, just because recovering off the shore, near the shore of Kerbin in a craft like this does maximize the return funds, which I guess is nice, but it's also just nice to try and pick a target like the Kerbin Space Center and go for it, Anyway, we're going to detach our service module here, which is our engine and monopropellant thrusters, etc, 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 which no longer serve a purpose for us. And we are going to... can't be on docking mode to activate a stage, because docking mode, when you press the space button instead of staging, it changes between linear rotation, well, between linear movement and rotation movement. But yes, so I had to just quickly close that. Just a quick explanation for people who didn't know that, or who forget like me. And we're just going to be facing one of the directions which isn't prograde or retrograde, so our service module which we're going to detach isn't in front or behind of us, so that there's no risk of one of the two items flying up and crashing into the other one. So we can in fact detach it just like that, and then face retrograde so that our heat shield takes the force of re-entry when we hit the atmosphere. Okay, we're hitting the atmosphere, and we are currently re-entering just over the Kerbin Space Center, so that, we can come down and drop into the ocean just off of it. This is not going to be that much of nothing, too unusual about this re-entry, just simply because, re-entry from low Kerbin orbit, particularly on a craft with such a powerful heat shield, is never going to be difficult. So, yeah, this is just a routine craft dropping down and landing in the ocean, nice and close to the shore of the Kerbal Space Center. In fact, we can't quite see the Kerbal Space Center from here. However, we can see the island which has the runway over there, which is a nice touch, I guess. Yeah, it's not quite the Kerbal Space Center, but close, Plus, we could see it as we re-entered, so I'd say this is pretty close. And we have in fact landed our craft, and we can recover it and complete 2 of our contracts there. Alrighty, so we recovered some funds from our pod, but almost nothing. But considering our entire craft did only cost $20,000 to begin with, recovering the pod like that actually gave us back 1/4 of the value of the craft, which is very nice. And we in fact have rescued the Kerbal which was stranded, and as a nice gesture, slash because the game forced them to, they've in fact joined our space company, our space center, whatever you want to call it, and are now available for missions to do for us in the future. So yes, thank you for watching. Pretty cool mission, first space station mission, well, where we docked with one and didn't just put it up in space or rendezvous with it. Yep. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, or subscribe, or comment, or do all the above. Seriously, that stuff really helps support my channel, like, a lot, and plus I really enjoy, watching cool numbers go up, like view numbers and subscription numbers. It does do quite a lot for my personal morale, so if you do want to support me and my channel, do leave likes and comments. I do read comments and reply to them and try and interact with my audience, and interact with my audience as much as possible. So yes, other than that, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.